We have a sign-in list.
Yep.
We do.
Right there.
I think we're really hard to train. We can do it. All right, Lacey's agreed to be our official timekeeper. Okay. We have 4 people. All right, the first person on the list is Amber Harrington. Hi, Amber.
Hi.
Go right ahead.
Go ahead. All right. Hey, I'm Amber, and I'm the mama of a little guy who's going to be entering his first year of kindergarten at Gems this year. This isn't exactly how I pictured getting involved in his school year, but here we are. And one of the huge hot button topics that has a lot of people in the buzz is the 4-day school week that we brought up 2 meetings ago. And after reading a few articles, I thought I'd share with you some of the pros rather quickly that struck me. First one being that school dropout rates lower, which is a big deal in the state of Idaho. 2, there is a better student-teacher morale, which leads to less discipline referrals, which is a significant thing if you've ever worked with kids. I'm just saying. 3, attendance numbers do go up since people are able to schedule their appointments for the one day off or our time to work when we look at the hours of our local clinics. Something that I mentioned in an email that I sent to all of you with the hours of our local clinics. Attendance numbers also go up because students who are involved in extracurricular activities which require travel are rarely in their classrooms on Fridays and a 5-day school week anyway, which is why a lot of schools who do 4-day school weeks tend to take their Fridays off. There is concern for how this does affect the younger students. So I thought I'd remind everyone that school in the state of Idaho is actually not mandatory until the age of 7. With that said, I am reminded of my own kindergarten days and how they were every other day with an implemented nap time. Also, last point, which is pretty much a pro, is 46 county schools and charting schools have implemented a 4-day school week in the state of Idaho. So if we should ever go this way, we have a lot of resources to learn from should we ever reach out. I do want to end this little speech to say how incredibly humbling it is for our school districts that this is one of the things we're looking into. We are not in a position where we get to be picky or choosy. We are a district that is failing levies, and because we are, we have to look at those around us who for many years failed levies and look at the things they had to do to keep their schools running. A 4-day school week is at the top of the list. Consolidating schools follows closely behind, which I hope is not the case anytime soon for the sake of CV schools, for their staff, for the kids that would have to drive from Lowell or Lowell to Kuski to shuttle up to Granville, and the many hours that they would have to spend here for after school activities and sports. I hope that by carrying out preventative steps now, you won't ever have to hit that rock bottom in 5 years from now, wish that we had done it earlier.
All right, Vincent Rondog.
I have a couple more copies of these. This is some information input on the superintendent's position. That's one of the items here on the agenda tonight. I've handed out 5 copies to the board as well as one to Mr. Fisk. If you go to the last page, unfortunately, this is the way it's printed out. There are 5 columns actually. This is the fall enrollment as of 2021 and 2022 for all the school districts in the state of Idaho. What I then did was highlighted in the gray what I thought was a representation of the size of our school district between 1,000 to 1,300 students, which are approximately 14 schools in there. Over to the far column, you will see a dollar figure. That is what the school superintendent is paid for that position. The lowest of that number is out of Orofino at $53,760. You'll see in parentheses 1, which means that these are a full-time employee. The only anomaly in that list is on page 3, and that's the Buell school superintendent who is a half-time employee represented as a 0.50. Also in there, another anomaly is the highest, which is $122,103 for the McCall Donnelly School District. So what I did was I took a modal average, picked out the highest and the lowest, and felt that the $95,000 to $105,000 range would be a recommended range for a superintendent. Okay, so that's where the numbers came from. So that leaves the board, in my opinion, to have 3, if not 4 options. Option A is to accept the $95,000 to $105,000 range. B is have that position go part-time, which many have done in the school districts throughout Idaho. C, no superintendent at all, which at one time the school district that existed. And D is to eliminate and or disperse a job position to the superintendent and others. For example, the federal program director who is in charge of Title IX, which almost doesn't exist today with the fluid gender identity issues. Homeless students, I don't know if there's a big problem here in this district with homeless, and likewise with disabled students. So perhaps maybe the federal program director could be dispersed, and we would save some money in that direction as well.
Thank you. Next is Renita Lee.
The levy has failed for the 3rd time. It has been decided by the voters and it is done. For several years, Mountain View School District has been operating in what many voters deem as top heavy. I've spent many hours researching and speaking directly with the Idaho State Department of Education and the superintendents of similar school districts. This evening, the school board has been presented with a unique set of circumstances, a restructuring of administration due to attrition. We've asked the teachers and classified staff year after year to do more with less, maybe to their breaking point. It is now time to ask that of administration. The agenda contains action items for replacing the literacy coordinator, which was created 3 years ago, and administrative secretary. I ask you to please refrain from rehiring these positions. Allow the new superintendent to delegate the duties of their staff to fulfill the mission as they deem appropriate under state law. The past is behind us. Tonight, you have the opportunity to turn the corner and take us upwards again. And all I ask is that you vote with that thought in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Renita. And Ken Lessiker.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Sometime back, I was made aware, it's a number of weeks, that the obscenity laws in the state of Idaho are pretty solid, pretty well written, except they have an exception for all public libraries and school libraries in the state that are not subject to the obscenity laws. And it just kind of, in the Senate, even though the House sent them a bill to address this, and it has refused to even read it. So I don't understand all that, but I started checking into it. And I had a really good response from Mr. Joe Rodriguez and also Holly from the library here at GHS for helping me to understand how the ValNet book ordering system works in the school libraries, which also work in public libraries, which includes all the schools in, I don't know, North Idaho, I suppose, a large area. Any books can be ordered through there by kids. And there are hundreds, literally hundreds of highly objectionable books. As I've been looking through there, there's certain descriptive words used to look stuff up. There's some really awful stuff in there, but they're available through ValNet, even to elementary kids. Now, along with a detailed letter Mr. Rodriguez sent me, he also sent out a reminder to parents about the ValNet flag system for school libraries. Parents can have the librarian check all books ordered by their children. The librarians do filter the books that come in that are ordered and try to make sure they're appropriate for our students. They even have students bring books they find and show the library if they feel it's inappropriate. Quoting Mr. Rodriguez, he said, when the students bring it to us, then we know we're making progress and raising responsible adults, which I thought was pretty awesome. Ultimately, we all have the freedom to choose what we will do with all of the options that are available and all the new options that are becoming so increasingly easy to get our hands on via the cell phones. Instilling that moral compass is the ultimate goal for parents who understand the dangers. We live in the days when men shall call evil good and good evil. And it can be so confusing that all of us, I know that our librarians and the principals are doing everything they can to educate, filter, and protect our students and staff and communities from within the walls of the schools. I'm hoping a district will adopt an opt-in policy regarding sex ed. In other words, only those kids whose parents opt in and they want that for sex education and related classes will attend said classes. And it'd really be another step in parents' involvement in our children's education. Thank you for your time.
Okay. The next item on the agenda, item A, are job descriptions and pay scale associated with said positions. Do we have a handout?
You know, just what I sent you in the back of your packet is the pay scale piece. I did reprint the job descriptions. Sent all those to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll be contacting you for that in due time. All right, we have next item is an action item, which is to say we need to vote on it. And these are resignations that have come to our attention. These items can be voted on in a block, in other words, taking all of them at the same time or individually. So I would like to ask, do we have a motion regarding handling them as a block or individually?
I would make a motion that we accept the resignations in one block.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to accept block voting on the resignations, and these are for the resignations submitted by Becky Hogg, Cody Weddle, and Becky Gearing. So that motion being seconded, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? I would note that we're going to be a little more judicious about the time because we do not. Holly is not here. We don't have a clerk. Mr. Fisk is handling those duties, and so we want to give him time to make a proper record. All right, moving on, the next action item is the incoming superintendent's salary and benefit package. I would open this item for discussion. And as I'm inclined to do, I would like to start with the senior members of the board. And ladies first, if that's all right.
I definitely appreciate the thoughts of our community and everyone on where we could go with a possible salary and benefit. Huh? I've been trying. I'm not a really loud person. I think we definitely, need to realize we kind of have a balancing act here because while we want to be fiscally responsible with the funds that we have, we also want to be able to attract a superintendent. So, it would be wonderful to say, and I don't understand how that works for, they must have like a half-time.
It's not correct.
That's not correct.
It's not
Okay.
correct. I've spoken to Mr.
Orpheum is
Garrett.
106, right?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay, which that makes a lot more sense. while it would be wonderful to have the lowest figure possible for that job, we still need to be competitive. I know when we did the last superintendent search, I want to say, I think we had either 2 or 3, Casey, you could maybe remember, candidates that we were looking at, that by the time we got to interviews, they had already accepted other
I think
positions.
we had 2 finalists.
And we ended up having it go very, very quickly. So it's definitely a competitive market. So I would just suggest that we be in line as much as possible with the districts around us.
Do you happen to have a salary range in mind? Not, I apologize for putting each on the spot. but
Oh,
that's kind of
no,
what we're talking about.
When we did the last hiring, I don't remember what we had it set up as far as advertised. I want to say it was 105 to about it.
Yeah.
I want to say it was about
It might have been,
105.
Yeah, 95 to 105.
I think we had a range is what we did. I think it was 95 to 105 is that we put a range in there, which, I mean, basically looking at the school district around us, that's about, where they were at. And then, towards the end of the interviews, when we selected the superintendent that we wanted, I mean, there's some obviously room for discussing in there of what that salary ends up being between that 95 and 105 for that person.
It included benefit package at the time at that moment, it included family health care. And that changed for everyone, obviously.
And I would just say that the benefit package that we have now offered to our superintendent, I think is pretty comparable to the rest of the school districts around us, except there are some, as we said, that do offer depending there, which we don't, but there's getting to be less and less that do, so.
So 95 to 105.
That would be
Bottom line.
that would be my recommendation. I mean, it's a pretty tough market to find a superintendent.
No doubt. Casey, what do you think?
Well, I just picked this paper up. Cammy, I just hired a new superintendent and his starting wage is 95,000.
Yeah.
And he's gonna do the superintendent's job plus the federal programs director.
Title IV. So you would, not put words in your mouth, but you would concur with Melissa that 95 to 105 seems reasonable.
Well, I would think so, but could we maybe just put negotiable, or I see a lot of jobs negotiable upon experience, or
You could do that for entry level and maybe some mid, but this is somebody running the district. I think we need to have firm numbers. So people aren't. I think it would just be nice for people who are applying to know what they would be getting in that range. Doesn't really lock us into anything, but
No, I do also think it's really important because a lot of times you are asking people to a lot of times make a significant travel to come here. And if they're looking from outside the area, I mean, I think they really do need to have an expectation.
well, yeah, I just meant during the interview, you could negotiate.
Yes, and we do.
If it's a set price, but then after they get here, you don't negotiate with them.
Right.
so you'd be okay with us putting the range on the postcard and the brochure, that range of 95 to 106, 105?
This all comes about because Steve doing 80% of the work, 90, 100% of the work in some cases on this superintendent search package. I just thought this was an item in particular, the salary package, which needed to be decided by the board. And so we have 2 proposed languages that we've worked through so far. One is the board is prepared to offer a salary range of X to Y depending on experience, or we could go for the board is prepared to offer a competitive compensation package to include a benefit package and salary depending on experience, which is cool. Thank you. So That's why this is coming up the way it is. We just need to have this done before we send this out. So I still want to get the input of the board on this. So given that you were officially in office before we were, B and I, what do you think?
I think superintendent probably has the toughest job in the district. And if you're gonna say, try to bring in one that's gonna really do this a little bit, you're gonna have to be competitive. And I absolutely agree.
So you would be okay with it, not this range, but so we would say the board is prepared to offer a salary range of 95 to 105, depending on experience.
Depending upon experience.
Understanding we're not locked into that necessarily. If we have some negotiation room, that gives applicants, potential applicants, at least a ballpark of understanding where we're coming from salary wise. Okay.
So many times, just to add, I think superintendents will look at, as Casey just read, Kevin has a little under 500 students, so they cut the staffing is cut nearly in half. So the superintendent looks at, I think you said 95,000. That might seem pretty good for someone to search something like that out. And you look at the number of employees that fall under your guidelines, the number of students. That usually is how the range starts to move itself.
Sure. That makes sense. All right, B.
So should we keep the range open to 109? Is that what you're kind of?
Well, if we're not obligated to it, I prefer to stick, but it's your time. I'm sorry. You go.
No, that's okay. I was just asking.
Yeah,
I just need to know what to tell them.
Some folks have added, some schools have added, the board is prepared to offer a salary that is commensurate with other districts this size. And then it allows you to be open to what their experience may be when you start to sit down, as Casey said, negotiate. It is a negotiated opportunity for that person coming in. It's really the only position that you do negotiate with in your country. So the things can be determined through that. So you'll see some of those particular statements as well, where you don't put a salary, but they may inquire. So they may write, Idaho School Board Association, say, has the district given some idea of the range?
Just for the record, I concur with the 95 to 105 figures generally. I very much like the language suggested by our superintendent with respect to the what's on the package and what's on the brochure without specifying the number. Or if that seems to work. That's going to be a heck of a motion.
I personally, I would make the motion that we do put the salary range of 95 to 105 on the brochure, just because from being a business manager, when I put out ads and I put a dollar figure in there, I get a lot more response than if I don't.
I know.
When people have a range of expectation, I think it does make a difference.
Second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We roll this 95 to 105 on our recruitment brochure paperwork, understanding that we have some negotiation. I do like to, if we could work in sort of just language regarding other districts of this size. I think that's wise. That clear as mud, Mr. Chris?
No. Yeah, right.
Thank you. All right, action item number 3 is what's written here is to consider current personnel openings or restructure. And to that is a general description of what this item is about, since we're going to be talking about positions and not people. What we're looking to do is to consider the current personnel openings with an eye as to whether we're inclined to hold on them and restructure, which brings with it the possibility of reviewing and rewriting and or merging job descriptions, and then salary reconsiderations for each position that we're talking about. So this, one of our speakers this evening, is this piece, as Mr. Fisk might say. So hopefully that's clear. I don't know that there's anything legally speaking that would prevent us from dealing with this as a block item, is there?
We need to talk about them individually, I believe.
I think what's important that I'm looking for, and probably the board as well, is, hey, Todd, you're holding, and you're gonna move forward. So I guess from me is you have some time that perhaps you can gain some traction with getting it posted. There are some difficult pieces to the puzzle here that you probably should get consideration for. One is your business manager payroll. Those are pretty critical spots. And so can you get them on time and in the time frame that we've been given, so there could be a little bit of not, imparting knowledge and losing close to 100 years of institutional knowledge real quick, and that could be fairly important. So I think the list is that difficult, it's going to be difficult, and you want to try and get it posted. So if you're going to hold, then that's one thing. If not, then that's what I'm looking for you guys to say. Let's get it posted, get it out there, and then if you have a salary range, what to put in there so they get it listed, that's what would be important.
Right, and implicit in what you're saying is if we're going to hold on these with an eye towards restructure, we need to get busy,
Yeah.
really busy.
Yeah.
So I get
And there
that.
may be some things that we want the new superintendent to certainly tackle. But you got to understand, they're getting here July 1, let's say, and trying to hit the ground running with a few things. There could be some people that would be important for them to try and figure out which is their team. So those are just considerations.
Yes, thank you. Just for the audience who may not have a copy of the agenda, there's items A through E. We're talking about the business manager position, the payroll clerk, administrative secretary at the district level, the district office level, assistant transportation director in Grangeville, and the federal programs education, special education, and curriculum director, who also serves on the lead as a member of the leadership team and serves all schools. So those are the positions we're talking about, and we will, I guess we'll deal with them one by one. The first item up then is the business manager / finance for the district office, meaning the district as a whole. I'd like to open this for discussion, and if you don't mind, just for sake of organization, just keep it the same format.
Share this real quick, just for the business
Could we
manager.
wait until it's your turn, please?
Oh, sorry. I
That's
didn't
all
know
right.
there were
No
turns.
problem. I'd like to just start with some semblance. Melissa, if you would like to start us off.
I know we're looking at these one by one, but I would just make a suggestion as far as the first three, the business manager, finance, the payroll clerk, and the administrative secretary. There's, I guess, two schools of thought. One school of thought is bringing in a new superintendent and having that superintendent, put together their team or have things structured how they want. The other school of thought is to have some key positions in place, so there's some passing of knowledge. The other part, I guess, that I would kind of like to interject is if you're coming into basically running a huge operation and you know nothing about really truly that entire operation, its team members, the people who work there, the staff, how that district functions. I mean, it's a huge learning curve. I know, Todd, when he first started, constantly just bear with me. I'm getting my feet grounded. That's a lot to step into a position. And if we we saddle that person with having to make a lot of new hires when they don't know the mechanics of the district, that could be very difficult. I also would just, think that we could possibly ask Mr. Fisk if he were to, as he got this, position handed to him of who was in his office, if he were to restructure it, what would he do? If he were to take these, 3 positions and what's going on in the district office right now, how would he organize that? I don't work in the district office every day. I can read a job description till I'm blue in the face. That doesn't mean I know how everything works and how everything flows. I would like to see us give this a little bit of time, and if Mr. Fisk is willing, have him present to his thoughts on how do we rearrange this. I mean, we don't have to go with what he thinks, but if he's in that, job every day, day in, day out with these people, he may, I would think he would have better ideas than we do. As far as the assistant transportation director, I think, do you want to go through each one or all?
I thought that's what we
Okay.
agreed we needed to do. And that's fine. I'm completely open.
Okay. For the assistant transportation director, I think we're really, really struggling in that entire department right now for staff. And not filling that, I think, is really, really hard on our entire busing. Federal programs, I think this is yet another key role that we can't go a long period of time without having. Literacy coordinator, I think there's different things we can do with that. And it's federal funds, so eliminating it doesn't benefit us. If we could split it up into 2 positions, one at each elementary school, something like that. I think we've got options there, but I'm not dead set on that one has to happen, today, but I just want to kind of put in everybody's mind the way that most people operate when they're looking for a job. If you're looking for a job and you're going to go to work for a school, you're really looking for a job now, and you want to have something before, the school ends. And in the summer, you're going to have a lot less people looking. That's my 2 cents.
Next,
You're next.
well, my thoughts are maybe we could change things up just a little bit. Got some handouts here. Of what it would cost to hire a comptroller. Somebody who's going to specifically work in.
Thank you.
money. Leave the superintendent, who is an educator, to educate. Comptroller in most companies that I've ever been familiar with handles the finances. Of course, they have to work with the superintendent, but rather than a business manager, hire someone perhaps with an accounting degree as a comptroller to specifically put the finances. Just a thought.
Are you proposing this added on to, so we'd have the business manager
No,
and
we
we have
eliminate
the
the business manager.
this is a replacement of
Replace
Of
the
that-
business
that
manager with a
position.
comptroller, someone with accounting experience, financial. I know you keep hearing, well, you can't run a school like a business. Well, I think you can.
So this would be under the heading of restructuring.
Restructuring. On the payroll clerk, I would like to investigate what it would cost to hire payroll company versus what it costs to hire the person. You have an employee. What you pay that employee is not what it costs you to support that. There's lots of that, but sometimes it doubles it. So if you have a payroll person, you're paying $50,000 to it, very well could be $100,000. I would like to get some bids. We know how many checks we got, how many employees we got. Just find out what a payroll company, it could be a payroll company in Lewiston, it could be a payroll company in Pennsylvania. It doesn't matter with today's technology. If there's a big savings there, there must be. If companies do it. I hear them advertised on TV and radio all the time. Payroll, today software. It's a matter of putting everything in and pushing the button, does the checks. Why we need a full-time person sitting there. Administrative secretary, I think that's probably something we should wait, let the superintendent decide if he wants or needs. The assistant transportation director, I'm not sure we need one. We have a transportation director. He's 45 minutes away in today's telephones. Why we couldn't have a head bus driver here in Grangeville? Pay him an extra, him or her an extra hour. That's another $20 to make sure all the buses were there. All the buses have drivers. If not, then we contact the transportation director. I think there's a lot of savings there, and we're talking about savings. When our last assistant transportation director was hired, I remember that it was required that he has a lot of tools. My son-in-law applied, he didn't have all the tools to work on diesel buses and that sort of thing. And we've kind of gotten away from that. My understanding is that the Kuski buses all go to Lewiston, down to Moses Madden's to have their oil changed. Well, how ridiculous is that? I know what it costs to do it yourself. I have 2 Peterbilts, I have tractors, I have farm equipment.
Well, all the oil changes are done by us.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Why did they go to Lewiston?
There are some things with manufacturing warranty work for the new buses that has to
Oh,
go.
okay, so it's not for a service deal? Okay.
Roseanne does a lot of that.
Who does?
Roseanne.
Oh. And the same in Grangeville then?
Yeah, we do the oil changes up here. That's what that person is. Did here. They're not mechanics, you know, they're not able to do simple mechanical work.
Well, a $50,000 assistant transportation person could easily turn into what, 100,000? Not probably quite, but you know, by the time you add benefits and wages. I'm not convinced that we need an assistant transportation director. I don't know what a transportation director does during the day. Once the buses are out and they bring the kids back, what does he do for the next 6 hours? Why he couldn't handle both areas? Just a thought, I'm trying to save money. Federal programs director. Was a half-time job before we hired the last person. Why it can't go back to a half job before we hired?
That wasn't a solo piece. That was already included in one person's job description.
Say that again.
The federal programs director was one person as special ed, had about 7 or 8 things. You understood that correctly?
I do.
Okay.
And I know that before we hired our current one, that it was a half-time position and the other half was that person who did the same one. And when we hired the new ones, it went to 2 different jobs. I'm just wondering if we can't tie that in perhaps with the literary coordinator, if we need that. I'm sure we don't need a literary coordinator for $2 to $66,000 and a federal programs curriculum director. That those could be combined or could be combined somehow with the building tech person.
So just so for your understanding on the literacy piece, you may decide to go whatever direction you prefer. Those are all Title I federal dollars. If you don't use them, you will lose them. They have no impact on your general fund. You can decide, I think Melissa just said this, mix those dollars up, perhaps you will provide more supports in those local elementary schools. You could do a mixture of things with that. But just remember, those dollars don't impact your general fund at all. So your maintenance of effort for you to spend out those Title I dollars are going to be critical that you do that, or just dry out. So you have an opportunity you want to make sure you stay on top of it. In terms of federal fund and special education director, special education, someone mentioned, I think they thought we don't have special ed kids. Nearly a couple hundred kids in special education. Over 20% of our population is in special education. It is a massive undertaking that definitely needs those supports. Mr. Weddle probably initiated Medicaid reimbursement to the tune of about $150,000 a year. Certainly covered the majority of his salary. I think we paid 6 hours a week out of the general fund for Mr. Weddle as a director in all of the things that he's done. A bargain. And you can do that again, but you must have a person that understands Medicaid billing, process that goes through. Cantor played a big role in that in the administrative office, along with Cody, to make certain those things are billed and billed out appropriately. So I think it's important you guys got to have that context as you think about those particular positions.
Cody Weddle also supervised how many teachers?
Well, he supervised all special
10,
ed teachers.
12?
There have been about a dozen or more. Probably closer to 20 plus. When you figure all of the aides, para aides. So a special ed student may have a one-on-one aide. You don't get to touch it. So keep, again, for context, the board may say, hey, we want to cut. If there is a special ed one-on-one aide that is impacting the student, you don't get to touch it. You have to fund that. You have to fund it in some way. So it's not a negotiable item. It's not Todd's item. It's just not a negotiable item.
Todd, how much do we get reimbursed for those two positions?
Two positions.
Yeah, how much
Like
do
the
we get?
literacy.
Yeah, how much?
You're not getting reimbursed for it. It's just you're able to take the funding piece out of the Title I funding, the federal funding program, and pay those positions. Can you be flexible with the dollars in that area? Yes. But you can't say we want to take the 60 and buy and we'll lower the general fund with it. You have to still apply. This is back to that maintenance of effort, maintenance of equity we talked about. You have to apply it in those particular areas. And what triggers that is, and the literacy work was doing the RI scoring around how those students were doing. If they got a 3 or a 2, a 3 represented 60 hours of literacy intervention, and a 2 represented 30 hours. And so once those tests come in the fall, you can imagine the breadth of what triggers the amount of hours that has to be pushed into them. And that's how that gets triggered, those funding mechanisms. So it's not something that's just generated by what they do. It's what you get, and it's based off, there's a formula for that. Some of that is a poverty formula. Those things.
With respect to the Title I funding, if we were to use your word, if we were to let that dry up or basically go away, is there anything that prevents us from reapplying well, I understand that. I'm just saying as a concept. Is there anything?
I can't answer that. I would just echo what Lacey just said.
Yeah.
Don't even go down the path. I may concur with you that you may say we're going to leave that one to our new suit. Know that that's there. That's something we're going to put on their plate. They're going to have to do some. They're going to be at a little bit of a loss because come July, the team isn't here, right? So there isn't going to be necessarily a way for them to learn about, gosh, would it be better to have a teacher and another aide there? Would it be better to have 2 or 3 paraprofessionals that we can infiltrate in with those dollars? Would it be better to have the director's position? It's just going to take some groundwork for them to do that, is all I'm suggesting.
Thank you.
So would the federal funds that the federal programs director get exclude him from having additional work?
No, and it hasn't. That's I think someone mentioned too, Title IX. Title IX is an absolute full swing. The mountain of work that it takes for us to be Title IX compliant is big. He happens to be a Title IX coordinator. You have to have a Title IX decision maker. That happens to be me. You have to have a Title IX investigator. This now encompasses everything from a sexual harassment charge by a staff member, a student, student to student, staff to staff, staff to student, student to staff. It is an enormous piece. It was a policy you just adopted. If you remember, it was about 45 pages. Title IX is in full existence. It's not just going away,
But it's not optional.
and it's not optional.
Right.
Because you take federal dollars, you don't get to opt.
Good. All right.
Jason?
Well, we still pay some out of the general budget though, right? Their
That's correct.
retirement and their,
Yeah,
Call.
benefit package, that's correct.
so it's not like these are free employees. Yeah.
No, they're not free by any stretch of imagination, not even out of the federal dollars. I don't want to say that's sound like that's the suggestion. I'm just want the board to be clear that in light of the budgetary shortfall, I don't want you to be thinking, oh, we could grab that and lessen this pot over here. Because it's not going to. It's still going to be a need that it's the money's there and you can utilize it. It's protected that way. So
But we could redirect those funds.
you can redirect it though in the area of literacy.
Right.
So you just can't redirect them to shore up a levy loss, for instance.
Right. Cost of doing business might not be a bad way to look at it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
But if we have a literary coordinator that's making $66,000, there's still a lot going to come out of our general fund, correct? Retirement, Percy, Social Security, workman's comp. Obviously, somebody.
Well, all of those trailing fund, those are all trailing expenses. I guess I can't say to you right now, 100% certain, does that come out of the trailing funds also come up? Can you build them out of the title literacy? I don't know 100%, but we're not talking a huge amount of money that way. But nonetheless, I would just suggest to the board, do not let those dollars go just because you decide not to fill it. You may decide to wait, but I would suggest you don't lose them.
Nope, you're seeing. If you want to pass, come back, we're good. I'm all right with that.
Yeah, I think I'll pass.
Hey,
Oh, thank you. Okay. So if we want to look at the first one as the business manager, we were looking at the wages, I thought, and whether it's called the business manager or comptroller, it's the person who does all of the finances for the district, it was at 99,000. This number I just put in there at 55, but of course we can change it to whatever. I just took the regional salaries for this position. And if you take the lower ones and average them together, it comes to 51.5. And so I have it based on expenditures on the left of the district. And then I have the amounts that the salary for that position is. So currently this was 2021 and now it's at 99. So this was last year's.
You happen to have handouts?
No, but I can email you this.
Okay.
So then this is the state from the State Department of Ed. This is the average for the state, but please keep in mind, this is like Swan Valley, West Ada. This is all of the state of Idaho. And that average is 74,000. So I was just looking at the averages since we're hiring new, Orofino, their business managers paid 50,000 and the state average is 74. So there's that range between 50 and 74. I thought 55, but that was just my 2 cents on that.
And with the money that we would be saving with that, we could potentially, this is in gray because it's just a part-time auditor. Our county has a local internal auditor, and I did talk to some other business managers, and they said even a part-time auditor, 2 days a week might help. And it also, the Presnell Gauge audit on page 51 for the schedule of findings and question costs year ended June 30th, 2021, there was a significant deficiency. And it was internal control systems generally attempt to divide up accounting tasks among multiple individuals to improve the ability of the organization to identify errors within the accounting system. And Mountain View has concentrated a minimal number of accounting duties to one individual such that a complete segregation of duties is not possible. There are a limited number of personnel available to provide a complete segregation of duties. So that's why I suggested maybe somebody like that. Are we going through all of them right now? Everybody else?
It's your choice, it's your turn.
Okay. So if we don't choose to hire part-time or do something with that auditor position, I thought possibly, I know the HR person was busy the last person was very busy with, they have to maintain the teacher's credentials and report that to the state. They have to do their monthly payroll. They have so many, they have to do insurance. They have a lot of, the person that was previously in there did an incredible job, and she was busy all the time. She has to maintain every individual's records and do the Percy, do all of that. So she was swamped as is, but if we had to, maybe she could take 1 day a week, I don't know, and possibly do the auditor position with the HR at full time. So the state average for that position for HR is 58. Orfino pays their person 38. And so currently it's 56, and I would propose 45, but I mean, these are just, I hate saying these numbers, these are people's lives and livelihoods, but and then we have Secretary Hagan still at 47 for federal programs. I couldn't get the answer to the Orfino one. Do you know how much they make, Todd?
Which
The
one?
Orfino federal programs position?
It's all packaged as it's very similar as it was here. Not only federal programs,
Right.
special ed director, curriculum instruction.
Yeah, he had like
It
a
would
really
be
long
rated
list.
90, I believe it was like 89,
Okay, and we were paying 91, so.
right?
pretty
The
close.
difference there is a 4-day work week.
Right.
You know, and then 70% family health.
Right, okay, excellent.
So it probably is a little higher with those benefit packages.
That makes sense. So it's at 91 currently. I threw out maybe an 81 to 91, whatever we come up with. I put Joe Rodriguez still at tech part-time at 47. There is this other position out here, which is Mike Stevens. I would love to rehire somebody in that position, but it was 48,000. So it all depends on what we want to spend our money on. I think it's definitely necessary, but we could also possibly go back to the building techs that made 2,500 a year, and they were just in the schools and they would just work after school. But it is an integral position, but it's just with the levy not passing, we might have to postpone to hire a year.
You said 2,500, like, is that what you said? Like, that's
The
like-
building techs, I think that's what I got when I was
Okay.
building tech about that.
So
I'm sorry.
oh, no, go ahead.
I just forgot the literacy coordinator. I didn't put it up there because I'd like to restructure those funds to something else in the schools.
I have to agree with you on that. I also think maybe, I know Melissa, you said that, you know, maybe the next superintendent coming in would probably like to choose his own people. Yeah, to make it better.
That's not really what I said, but that's okay. I
But
mean,
you
as
mean
far
the
as,
admin secretary?
As
Well, no,
as
no.
far as the admin and
well,
the,
that's, I said the exact opposite.
so you want us to choose them?
No, I want the superintendent who has been in the school district for almost 2.5 years, who knows the people, who knows the jobs. to make a suggestion for
Right,
restructuring the district office.
right. So my 2 cents in going forward with that. The business manager's position should probably be filled quicker than later because that's a pretty big seat to fill. However, I think you could probably delegate some of the duties that the business manager does. So that way, maybe the next one coming in isn't overwhelmed. Because, I mean, she's swamped all the time and it's hard to get information because she's really busy. So I think maybe if the payroll clerk and the business manager could know how to do each other's jobs. So that way when somebody's sick, or at least there's 2 sets of eyes on the books at all times. You could also take back all the duties that the high school secretaries used to do. And they used to run their entire schools financially. All that money went to the schools as they used to before it all got pulled up here. So that way when, let's just say a teacher says, hey, I have X amount in my account, or I have X amount of money, what do you want me to do with it? Well, when the business manager is getting bombarded like that all the time, she can't answer everybody. So then all of a sudden we have, you know, funds sitting around that shouldn't be sitting around. And if they would go back to the financial secretaries of each school, that might delegate a little bit of leave off of the business manager's back. That also would help with dissecting a little bit of the administrative secretary's position as well. So possibly you might not need it. That's my thought on that. I think the federal programs position, Casey is right. I worked in the elementary school at CV before Mr. Rodriguez was hired, actually, for the tech position. And there was one gentleman that did the federal programs and the tech position. However, I'd like to rehire that position like right now because you got kids. Kids are gonna do what kids do. They're gonna look stuff up. They're gonna try, even though we have all the filters on there and everything on there, but you can't be chasing down kids every time they poke the wrong button, you know. But I think as far as, you know, rehiring the business manager on the payroll clerk, those pay schedules can definitely be structured as well to help save some costs. Oh yeah, transportation. I kind of like to hold off on that one quite so well. I know that Grangeville probably struggles more so than CV does because they probably have more routes, a little bit bigger of an area. There's no reason that the transportation director here could not come up and help out. I believe he's hired by the entire Mountain View School District, so there's no reason that he couldn't be filling in and then have a head bus driver down at CB right now.
Okay. My 2 cents. The thinking about this over it feels like a couple of weeks at this point, or more. I'm inclined to agree with Casey's restructure idea of a comptroller. I was doing my best to pay attention and read this at the same time. Just as a matter, since we're here to discuss things, could I get somebody to put this up on the screen? I think I've worked in government organizations and dealt with comptrollers for having been a grant manager and those types of things. And I think it's important to understand what we're talking about. A comptroller is basically, it's one of those jobs that you can pretty much define to meet the needs of the organization. All right. A comptroller is basically an oversight person. They are a manager, if you will. They have responsibilities insofar as it's not uncommon to see a comptroller, depending on how they put together his job description, to provide, for example, a quarterly internal audit to, in this case, it would be to the superintendent and to the board, also make that a public record, so that we'd have an ongoing oversight. A comptroller typically can be the direct supervisor of accounting and other program staff. It's a pretty wide open job. It's primarily, they're sometimes referred to as financial officers.
I'm working on it. You
No
can do it
bueno? All
faster.
right.
Come on over
I'll
here.
just keep running my mouth. The fact of the matter is, I think it's a good move in the sense of re-looking at how we do things. I campaigned on living within our means to the best of our ability. This would give us a long way towards doing that. To that end, I would recommend that we. There we go. Yes. If you hear of a controller, that's usually in the public domain. Comptroller is the same word. I don't know why it has to be different, but it's in a public entities for government. There's a comptroller versus a controller, so don't let the word confuse you like it does me. In any event, it's an oversight person. It's a mid-level administrator, would be a member of a leadership team on the financial and program side, as I see it. So I think that's a good idea. With respect to the payroll clerk, it makes sense to me, and especially in this day of hopefully improving technology, that we at least take a look at getting an external payroll accounting firm to do our payroll. I agree that it's basically a numbers entry type of a situation. As I understand, the district, as with many businesses these days, people are paid by automatic deposit. It's fairly rare that we write as I understand, that we write a paid check per se, and I think it's something that I want to look at because I'm hoping, based on my past experience, that we can save the district some money. That being said, I am perfectly willing to admit that we probably need something in the form of a payroll clerk responsibility, although we don't need a full-time payroll clerk if we did this, because we need somebody local to problem solve and to make sure new hires are getting information in timely and that sort of thing. But I think that's something we definitely need to look at before we just assume to hire a payroll clerk. So that would be a restructure and hold for me. The administrative secretary, that's a restructure and a hold based on this concept, and then seeing how it is that person might, maybe we'll have two people who 10%, this is an example, 10% of their duties are they'll give one half of the alphabet and the other half of the alphabet to help people with the payroll. I don't know, however it forms out, but that's another restructure and hold for me on the administrative secretary at the district office level. I like the idea of looking at how it might better work for the district with respect to saving money as well as efficiency. If we didn't hire the assistant transportation director and we took a serious look at, and I don't mean this as a slight in any way, shape, or form, but I believe we pay the transportation director for cell phone usage, as a matter of fact. So I say we get the most bang for the buck out of that, as has been suggested, and look into hiring a mechanic perhaps, and then have one director for the system across the entire district. That seems to be a reasonable thing to explore. So my recommendation on that would be to restructure and hold and see what we can do. Federal programs, special education, curriculum, and others. I absolutely concur with everybody's comments, especially Mr. Fisk, with respect to the fact that this is a job that simply needs to get done within their different categories. I'm not certain that some of these programs aren't able to be farmed out, as it were. I was doing my research over the past couple of weeks, and I noticed there's a superintendent who's also the Title IX. I believe that's your job now.
You
large
can't, that changed here 2 years ago. So it used to be that you could have a Title IX coordinator, right? Do those. Now under new federal law, you cannot be more than one item. So you have to have a coordinator. You have to have an investigator, a decision maker.
Right.
And it has to be 3 different people.
Oh, we need to update our policy because that's.
Well, you just updated.
Actually, it's in there,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay, it wasn't that clear.
That was the 45 page.
All right, I didn't, wasn't that clear, all right. Well, that being the case, we're right back to restructuring special education, I get that, same comment for me. I think there's a way to get those things done. Curriculum director, we had talked about not budgeting for that piece with respect to the actual purchase of new curriculum. I would be in favor of that cost savings and taking that out of the equation. So that's basically a hold and restructure quickly. Literacy coordinator, I like the idea of putting that back at the elementary school. And given that that is what I'm going to call a one-to-one, given that the funding by and large is able to compensate us, as it were, probably not the right word, but anyway, you get my meaning. For the work that's done in that regard, we absolutely need to make sure that gets taken. And I in this case, am 110% in favor of taking the recommendations of the people that are actually doing the work, the schools, the teachers, and people that see the need out there for this funding. Simply, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we get rid of this position, it doesn't benefit us at all. And given that it's a paid-for position, as it were, that I don't see the loss pending a restructure of how we go about it. And I think putting it closer to the kids makes sense to me. So I think that's it. I'd like to ask at this point, does you guys want to take a break and then we come back and vote on each of these? Or
No,
if not, then I'm going to ask that we take a
Both
break
can.
before we get to item 4. Which would you like to do?
Um,
It's a lot of stuff, is
fine.
why I'm saying this.
Did you say, as a matter of order, that we can or should, one way or the other, vote on these individually, or as Larry said, can they be done in a block?
It can be done in a block if you can provide the clarity. That's why I broke them out for you guys, because if you're, what I want to know is when we leave here tonight, if I need to post one of these or 2 of these or none of these, then I'll have that direction. So that's what I was getting at. If you're going to hold and do those things, and you'll let me know that you're holding on each one, and I'll hold. So that's what it's.
And as you and I have talked about, Mr. Fisk, and this were we to hold, that would put the pressure on us to meet frequently and often, probably to get it hammered out and move it forward. If we're going to hold and restructure, and I put the 2 of those together, maybe that's wrong for me to do that. If somebody has a comment in that regard, but to me, one is synonymous with the other. There would be no reason to hold if we're not going to restructure the position.
If you're going to have you're going to have to think through some chunks of timing.
Right.
If here we're basically 1st of April. If you post, your business manager or comptroller is a big piece for you guys. It's going to fall in the category of your superintendent search. It's going to take about, let's say it takes a month. Now you're 1st of May, and you go through the process of filtering, and you finally pick 2 or 3 to interview. Now you're May 15th, let's say, and then they have to put in notice, and maybe they need a month. Now you're middle of, you see what I'm saying? Now you're middle of June, if not further out, and that's what I'm describing to you is the timing. If you wait, now this timing could be September or late August or something like that.
That's why I'm hoping we can impose on you for what Melissa suggested, and that is your recommendations with regard to any of this, And perhaps a prioritized timeline, do this first, like you mentioned, the comptroller, and giving us a sense of priorities, timing wise, for what you understand how these things to take. We could, I don't disagree with anything you just said, but we could very well become fortunate here or there in one or two of these, and we turn right around and get something filled in 2 weeks to a month. We simply don't know.
That's correct.
We've had literally a lot of movement in this area regarding people. We don't even know, frankly, who a significant portion of our population is anymore. We don't know. We didn't just hire or just have somebody move into Grangeville who's a comptroller who's looking for a job. We don't know. So I leave that, if we can impose on you for help with those areas, by way of a memo, I would be very grateful for that.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
I move that we hire a business manager, comptroller, whatever you want to call it, but in the state, it's usually a business manager. And they are answerable to taxpayers as a business manager because of public information requests. So I move that we advertise the business manager position.
I'll second that. 'Cause
So just give some clarity, Pete.
we can restrict.
And I know you're about to go to discussion here. So are you suggesting that the position would read with comptroller with some business background, or comptroller?
No,
with
I would say business
school
manager, school district business manager. And then we can do the same description and add accounting. I think it's already in here anyway. Yeah, it says accounting practices or other job-related experience. It already has it in the job description. So we would fly it with the same job description, maybe adding answering public information requests, maybe.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion?
We might need to figure out what we want to pay, like the range,
Right?
or might want to do that later.
You can put that into your motion.
We want to restructure that job description.
Promotion is not to do that.
Right. You have to stick with what the motion was. If you want to withdraw, you can do that. Or
But it already
you
doesn't
can-
have, it doesn't have that she controls all of that. That's in there anyway. It just kind of happened that way.
Right, and I'm inclined to have the lines of responsibility, just simply in the interest of people knowing what they're responsible for or not responsible for. If you're going to hire somebody, it doesn't matter what the position is, and they are therefore, as a supervisor, responsible for the performance of what we'll call subordinates. That needs to be clearly spelled out in there.
Right? Did you read this?
I haven't gotten a
Business
copy.
manager?
Yeah.
It was emailed to us.
I've seen it.
That was in your packet. That I emailed to all of you.
It didn't come through my email. Then I looked for it.
So I'd like to discuss that and then amend it so I could add the salary range.
And that wording could certainly be that wording, salary commensurate with experience.
These 3 pages is all that came
There
through
were
on my
7
email.
attachments.
These 3 pages is all that came through on my email.
We don't need to.
That's why I asked about the
I'll
job
show you
description.
later.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
That's
I
all
sent
right.
it to you before the weekend.
I got it all in one.
Yeah. That's why I asked you early on about the job description.
Yeah.
That puts a little hitch in our get along.
Just my copy.
And I appreciate what you're trying to do, B, but reading this, and I'll hold it up and analyzing this at this moment is going to be a
Right.
little bit disingenuous on my part. To say I'm going to make a decision based on that.
If I could just add one small thing to the discussion, just the idea that, as the board, we're really, setting the parameters of where we want our staff to go. And this really feels like we are making an attempt to do his job. And I would just really prefer that. I don't work in the district office. None of us do. He does. It's just my preference that we have him present to us if he thinks some of this needs to be changed or how we could do it different. I would prefer that we do that. You know, if we want him to do that, and then we decide as a board to say, yes, we're gonna hire, no, we're not gonna hire, we're gonna hold, whatever, I mean, that's a different discussion, but for us to see to go through job descriptions and who does what and how they do it and what has to be done to keep our district functioning. I don't think any one of the 5 of us has that knowledge.
I
I wouldn't pretend to.
I absolutely understand your point. I don't necessarily see, I have no interest in dropping this in the trash and starting over, okay? My thought was to simply look at the elements that are presented here, and they're nicely bulleted and everything else, and seeing if there's just simply a way that we can reorganize what currently exists. I'm not looking to create anything new here.
I'm just thinking.
I understand, and that's why I've asked Mr. Fisk for those. Let me ask everybody, the panel, a question. We are scheduled to meet next week on the 7th, I believe, for a workshop. Between now and then, and I'll leave you to speak to your timelines on the information that's been requested, but we could get these, at least a couple of these, for lack of a better term, hammered out at the next work session. That's why we have to deal with these kinds of issues. And that, I don't think, honest opinion, is that going to hamper us?
You know,
dramatically?
you certainly could table that, this particular motion, and first of all, it's gonna have to die, because there's a second.
Right.
It's an open action. The board should remember, you know, months back, we've spoken about some of the restructure that was already trying to plan around what we did with the clerk. We knew that we needed to take some of those duties away. It was too much. Melissa kind of highlighted those particular pieces, so did Lacey. This is a big tiger, and a controller from the outside will probably struggle mightily with school funding. It's not regular funding, but where they won't struggle is they'll have accounting practices in a business. It's not simply business. It's more complicated. And so that person, when you go to interview them, will have to kind of root those out. And I think putting that open to see if you'll garner more people might be an advantage for the board to have that. So remember, in the restructure, the plan was to take the pressure off of Becky so that we could get through the COVID impacts. So I shifted those particular duties to Paulie. And in the end was, we would already have that person in place to replace Kendra at her retirement. And we were going to then shift the clerk duties all the way over to that person. And that flows, right? Sometimes you need more hours in a week. If it's board meeting week or the week before, it's going to be busier. And then those particular duties that we were going to shift around with things like IC reporting, accounts receivables and payable, we were going to move a little bit to help offset some of the work Paulie does. We weren't going to add anybody. We were just going to make the duties different. There has been some discussion with Becky and I. What would it take for someone to come in? Can it just be one person? That's kind of a question mark. It wasn't definitive, like, oh yeah, easy, someone to come in. It's a big task to jump in there. So it's not a real quick, easy answer for that, but you might be able to have success with a payroll entity. I've worked with them before, but you will need somebody on this end as the management keeper of that information.
And you should, sorry to interrupt you, but with all due respect to your initiating comments on this part of the conversation, you just described what a comptroller does. And we don't know that we don't have somebody out there who's a district business manager who wouldn't say, I can do that. I've been doing this for 40 years. So they're just calling it something different. Right. We don't know that that's not the case. And I say we owe it to the patrons and to the taxpayers to try and to find a way to trim the budget as much as we can reasonably, while still providing the services that the whole system, our system needs. And that's what I'm after doing. Okay. So where are we at? We have a motion on the table.
We were discussing.
So
discussing
you're
that.
at discussion, so it's to a vote right now. And so it could die by the lack of, a yay. A majority yay. Or it could go through with a majority.
And
And basically, the discussion or the motion is to move to hire, whether that be a comptroller or school business manager background. The job description that we have in play certainly can be manipulated next week more if you want to. And then we left it at what type of salary range were we going to have? You have to understand, Becky is a 35-year person. You know, that when you saw those numbers. So obviously, we know you're not going to be looking at some of that all the way out there in that range. You're gonna have some.
I guess I may have misunderstood Ms. Edwards' motion. So by this motion, if you're okay with it, this still builds in that we can meet on the 7th and agree not only on the salary package, but also what the job description and make changes as we think is necessary.
No salary package was listed in her motion. I was just suggesting that you wanted to complete that and it goes through, then what you're telling me is we want you to open up this position, post it.
As is.
Well, we
Just
added a
post the basic.
comptroller in there that she used that word.
All right. What is,
Comptroller.
since I didn't get that information, what is the salary range, please?
We didn't decide the salary range.
We haven't decided that.
In the back of that sheet of your packet right there, I did give just what this current salary was.
Right.
D gave some comparisons from around the state.
This is the,
99 is the current, state average is 74. Orfino's 50. And
Filipino's on their
region,
third
region,
one in 5 years.
I'm sorry. I couldn't hear.
Orfino's on their third one in 5 years. And the region 2 average, if you don't take Moscow, Lewiston, and us, was 51.5 or something.
Currently, at round numbers, throwing in 99,000 plus benefits. Which. let's see. I'm sorry, I guess I'm being dense.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. So B's motion encompasses what specifically?
Posting the position.
Move to
Just
hire the comptroller / school business manager. We have the job description that more than likely we attach. We'll put that in it, and they go online. Sound like you'd like me to make sure we add any public information requests in there. And then we stopped at a salary range.
So do we want to vote on posting it if we don't know what we're going to pay?
Well, we could do the DOE or we could choose.
And it could be salary done on experience, or commensurate with size schools. That's a little tougher one because you have a big array of experiences right now. But the DOE is pretty commonplace.
DOE is
Done on experience. It's just the acronym for,
Oh, I see.
yeah,
Okay.
that you would put in the paper, so Lori doesn't charge us so much.
I think your point about knowing what the salary is up front is really helpful. But
So Orfino's probably the lowest at 50. Well, that's not true. Hammy is 42, Genesee's 42. But yeah, the average is 51.5 and the state average is 74.
I would just say too, that just, I know if you call it a business manager, it doesn't mean in every district that that person does the same things. And it's really
oh,
hard
yeah, of
to
course.
compare. You might be comparing an apple to an orange. I mean, you don't know that. You have to dig into every single district and what they do. I just feel in some ways if we're going to change up who does what and how things work in the district office, I think posting the job is putting the cart before the horse. Just my opinion.
And you may get some experience with somebody that has some different things that allow you to think about some restructure on some of their prior experience.
And I feel like we have to advertise it now because getting it early. I mean, we all know the basic jobs of a business manager and what they're going to be doing. And I'd like to get our name in the hat when people are looking. I don't want to miss out on somebody that might love to move to Grangeville because we didn't have our advertisement out there.
Stubbing my toe on not having management responsibilities defined in here, trying to go through the
But
best I
remember,
can.
we were going to look at that on Thursday.
Well, how can we post a job tomorrow? Well, I mean, don't we have to provide it? Somebody would ask us.
I can give general duties of what we want to see down there, and then we can attach that after you're done next week. You're going to post it, and it's going to take some time.
Yeah,
I mean, we have other things posted, some we're not seeing any candidates for, some we're seeing just a few trickle in, so I think what he's alluding to is, time is something like that, and they reach out for more information. Tell me more about what it all entails.
I could live with it if we work toward the idea of managerial responsibilities attaching specifically to the position. I can work with that. So what do we do about? I like the depending on experience. It's not an out really. I think people understand what that means. It's spelled out. I certainly do.
I think it's gonna go out right now and we haven't decided exactly what that person does. I don't see how you put it, figure out right now.
Well, we've had a business manager forever, so we know the basic duties of a business manager. And we can edit those whenever we,
That's what I'm talking about doing.
right.
Precisely what I'm talking about doing.
At the last bullet point of every one of your job descriptions.
Other duties as assigned.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. And I would, with all due respect, I would just have an asterisk to that saying it's different when you're talking about being a manager of other people. That's not really something I don't think we want to have as other duties as assigned, because that's an important one. It's a big one. It brings potential liability on the district, and it's a dependency that takes on a whole other layer. When I say dependency, I mean a dependency of the district on that person, and I want to make sure it's clear what the expectations are.
It is a massive job.
No
You're
doubt.
right. You're exactly right.
That's why, Melissa's comments are very right.
As a matter of order, though, it is his mission, so if anyone's adding anything to it, it's.
That's true.
So as it reads, move the higher comptroller, school business manager background job. I just put job description, but you didn't say that those are my words.
My priority is just to get the word out there.
And DO done on salary done on.
Sounds good. So we can vote.
With one final comment, I simply object to not having the management responsibilities lined out, which is back to
Which we're going to address on Thursday.
not if your motion doesn't say that.
My motion
Well,
doesn't list
the job
everything in the
description
job
isn't listed in
description.
here. Your job descriptions could be what we want to put on the agenda to talk about. Well, it's not this Thursday, but the week of Thursday.
I would simply request that the motion be amended to add publishing of job description. Shall not take place before that's Thursday, April the 11th, which is the Monday following our next meeting, which is already scheduled.
I'm not gonna amend it.
It's her motion.
I know, I'm just,
Okay.
I'm asking for an amendment. She doesn't want to do it. That's her
Sorry, I'm
prerogative.
not going to do it. Thank you, though.
April 7th is what you showed for your work session, Larry. That's just.
Yeah, board work session, district office, yeah. Too bad. All right, any more comments? All right, call for a vote. I'm sorry, Mr. Fisk, one more time.
The motion was move to hire controller / school business. School district business manager. And the only thing I have is salary. DO.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Larry, you're an A.
Yes, sir.
Lisa's a yay. That's a yay. Be a yay. Lisa, you said yay. Okay. Next.
Next item is the payroll clerk. Item B, payroll clerk for district office. Your motion,
I move that we advertise payroll clerk district office position. Dependent on job description next Thursday. If we want to go to taking payroll out, and Casey, if you look into some expenses for payroll services, then maybe she would do, it wouldn't just be payroll clerk, it would be HR as a whole. So maybe advertise it as payroll and HR.
I'll second that one.
further discussion? Go.
Moved over to payroll clerk / human resource, payroll / human resources clerk, and I'm assuming we'll do the DOE on that as well for pay structure. Okay.
I heard subject to,
And Casey was asked to find out a little more information on.
Payroll expenses.
Well, you can't have it both ways. We're gonna
exactly.
investigate a payroll company, or we're gonna hire a payroll clerk.
Well, you would still have somebody maybe doing the HR or clerk positions.
It is two different, it would be two different positions. If you had somebody that you decided to go with a company, for instance, then you would need what you might call some sort of an assistant, right? That would be described it pretty well. There's a lot that goes on. Your meeting accreditation for certification for all teachers, to be certain that all credits have come through. Fingerprinting starts with Kendra, background checks, and then it gets funneled to Becky Gehring. And then that triggers other particular pieces. Then she's following up a benefit package. There are definitely human resource activities that she must be on top of. The PERSI retirement system, what you're taking in family benefits, all of the deductions that come with that it's a big, they're dealing with 170
Credit reimbursement.
75 people. I've just shortchanged it. It's a lot. What goes on down there. There is no idle time. There's no idle minutes or hours. It's a very busy time for Becky Gehring at all times. And so if you took this chunk of payroll and said you're going to move it to a payroll company, they issue the checks, they do all of your I-9s, all of your W-2 form, they do all of that work, but there's an input person. You still have to have, perhaps you would just call them a human resource type person. New hires, resignations, the closeout, there has to be a person that gets that information to be downloaded or uploaded. in consistent manners.
There's pros and cons to it, to be honest with you. I mean, we went for many years where we outsourced all of our payroll. And we found in the end, it made more sense for us to bring it back in-house and do it ourselves. And I would completely agree with both the comments that Todd and me made. What a payroll clerk does and what a accounting firm does that processes payroll are two really different things. In this aspect, you know, processing a payroll is, if you weren't a school district, processing a payroll is this person makes this much money, they have this much for their tax information, their benefit information, their XYZ, and you have a federal formula that says how payroll works. Anybody can use QuickBooks or whatever it is. The difference being, you still have to come up with all of that information. And for our school district, who's accredited, what they have, all the information about them as a person, you still have to come up with how much they're getting paid, what their hours are, what their tax information is, what their benefits are. I mean, that part of it is a lot of work. Basically, if you're just having someone do the payroll processing for you, that's just a small section of what you have an HR payroll person do. So, I mean, you're definitely, I totally agree with Todd. I've done payroll and HR, and you cannot get rid of that job responsibility by having someone do your payroll for you. There's still a lot more involved.
The majority, Casey said, the majority are direct deposits in our district. There's very few the other way now. In fact, that's pretty much when you're new. That's just how we roll.
We have a Skyward program that helps enter it and track all of that.
New secretaries to the hours before it gets to.
And you may find that the expense associated with that, because now you have substitute pay, you have coaching stipend pay. There's a massive amount of other pieces that are going to have to go into that. So you're probably, I don't want to guess whether you find yourself as that it would be cheaper. Have your on-site person so that you can do that when you need to. Could be an advantage, or probably has an advantage.
My guess is Ms. Gehring is here through June. My recommendation would be that we get the bids and we can revisit this as early as 7th or a date that we set after that. But my recommendation would be that we at least hold and let's see what the information is. And so I couldn't agree more with what you said, Melissa. I get that. And it's not as simple as running a machine shop where everybody's hourly and goes home and that's the end of that. But I still think we owe it to the people to pay the freight to see if there's a way that we might save money. So to that end, I'd recommend that we hold, get the bids and revisit potentially as early as the 7th, although I don't know if we get bids back that fast. Bids being a general number, I understand, subject to contractual arrangements. We may not be able to do it by the 7th. We may have to wait until the 21st. Who knows? But I don't see what we lose by at least giving it an honest look. So my recommendation would be that we hold.
There's a vote on
Understood.
the, okay.
So any other discussion? Yeah, Mr. Fisk, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Just to move to open payroll / human resource clerk position. Again, salary or hourly rate experience. And just your general comments and discussion.
All right. All in favor?
I
Opposed? Nay.
That motion carried 3-2. Post that.
All right, the next item is C, 3C, Administrative Secretary.
I move that we hold on this administrative secretary position at the district office.
I would second that. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
That passed 4-1.
Next item, Assistant Transportation Director. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we advertise for the assistant transportation director position, as I thought we did a couple meetings ago anyway.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Mr. Fisk? Straightforward.
Move to advertise this position for the assistant transportation piece. Might ask if there's a discussion around salary piece. We'll have to find that in this.
I opt for DOE, frankly.
Okay.
Yeah. That works.
Do you want to include that in your motion?
DOE, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Until Thursday.
You want to include it until Thursday?
Just, yeah, DOE is great. And then can we change it if we decide to change it at Thursday's meeting?
I guess we can go back into the.
And then just update it. Are we advertising in School Spring yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Second to the last E is the, I'm sorry. Dang. All right. No more discussion. I guess I'm in a hurry. Never decided, no more discussion and call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Very true.
Now, item P, Edward, Federal Program Special Education Curriculum Director.
I would make a motion that we advertise this position. With, DOE.
I second that.
Just for clarity, I'm sorry. Excuse me for jumping ahead. Any further discussion? Mr. Fisk, is for my ongoing edification. To your knowledge, there's nothing that prevents us from, I'll just refer to this as chunks of programs, federal program versus special education versus curriculum director. There's nothing that would prohibit us from another duties is assigned, breaking up of this particular position. Should we decide to do that later, and assuming we haven't hired somebody for the position?
You know, I didn't write these in any specific order, but I don't want you to get hung up on just federal programs. It's a big piece, but special education director is a really enormous one for you, and the amount of students that particular person helps to cover along with the staff is really important. I probably should have listed that first in order so that is an area of importance.
Yes. He has 8 hats he wears.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, and obviously
that
some of the
position.
hats are smaller, right?
Yeah.
Homeless liaison is a smaller hat. If I have to jump on that. Title IX can be a small hat, only up until you have to do investigation, where it becomes a very large hat. And so those are the particular pieces that are really important. Mr. Weddle, I'm guessing, is 4 nights a week on average in a IEP meeting of some sort supporting this particular team and that, so an individual education plan meeting with parents and administration. So that's the big piece.
I don't, my question wasn't related to undermining or diminishing the importance of any of these, especially with consideration to the special ed. I just want to be clear with everybody here. And get an answer is there's nothing that prevents us from these different responsibilities being reassigned.
No,
Okay, just as long as it covers.
it ended in the fact that you're hiring a special ed director. I mean, this would pull that away. And a federal programs director, I would imagine those two margins probably sit together, but there could be others that you decide could be. I think what would happen is that you would be getting information via your superintendent saying that this is impacting this director in a large way. I would like to take that piece away and put it over here so that I could free up some time or commitments. I guess that's what runs through my mind as something you might hear.
Okay, well, I apologize for sounding like I'm tooting my own horn with respect to recommendations, but you're helping me define what the potential of a comptroller does. They potentially, you're air traffic controller inside the district office. That's what that's about. So, okay. Any further, let's see, where do we stand on E? I think we have.
Just move the advertised position with the DOE salary piece. Be second, Melissa.
Further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, last but not least, what did I say? These, thank you. Literacy coordinator, title funds, serves all schools.
I move that we hold that position as literacy coordinator.
I'll second that. Any further discussion?
It would be good to have a recommendation from the 2 current GEMS and CV principals as to what their recommendation of if we don't have that exact position, what best serves your schools.
That'd be
That's a
great.
good idea.
Great idea, yeah.
If they each like a person or, you know,
Share.
appreciate your thoughts.
So do you want to include that in your motion? She,
Sure. Yes.
so move to just hold the position and then gather some information, recommendations from elementary principals on what that may or may not look like.
Great.
That'd be
Sounds
great.
like- okay.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Somebody objects, I'd like to take a break. All right. Okay, we're gonna take a break for 10 minutes. Let's make it, we'll reconvene at 7:30 by that clock. All right, thank you. We'll get restarted here. We only have one item left. And it's fairly loud. There we go. All right, the fourth action item is outline on budgetary projection for 2022-23 school year. And Mr. Fisk, who has been doing double duty in the absence of our board clerk, has helped me with some notes, which I'll just relate to you here in summary, which is basically this is a how to fund the budget. And as an example, we have options, right? Thank goodness we have options at least. regarding future levy requests, not running a levy. We need to look at outlining what the path forward is going to be for any work that we have to do in this regard. And of course, we need to get that prioritized by necessity and groundwork. We also have a picture which requires us to negotiate and reconcile a variety of issues, cash flow, program cuts, personnel, forest funds, which we still haven't received. I understand they're supposed to be here by the end of the month. And by the way, if you would care to make a note on your calendars on the regular board meeting on April 18th, I have an agreement from the county superintendent, the chair of the superintendents, Skip Brandt, is going to come and give us a talk on SRS funds from the county's perspective and how they do things. And by then, we should know the exact number for the coming year of what those funds are going to be. So this was actually Lacey's suggestion, and I thought it was a good one. So we have made arrangements for that. So that's April 18th. I'm looking forward to that, just to learn and make sure everybody's on the same page. So,
County commissioner, is that what you said?
yeah, county commissioner. Did I say superintendent? I did.
Okay, just clear.
Yeah, Skip Brandt.
Okay.
Okay, so
That's at CVE, right?
yes,
Let's skip that there, so that'll work out.
that's the district office. That's April 7th is district office. April 18th is at Clearwater Elementary Library.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you might contact Skip and ask him if he could also include, I think he called it GEM, GE or JEM insurance. The whole county has made a change. He says they got a lot better insurance for a reduced price. Up till now, this company is only, it's either through Blue Cross or Blue Shield, have only insured county people, but they can and will do schools. You might have him include that in his address.
Oh, well, I'll definitely ask him.
It's called Gem State.
Jim State.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I'd heard that somewhere. I'm glad you brought it up. Terrific. Okay. So good luck to any one of us who takes this on formulating a motion in this regard. I guess what I'd like to do before I ask for a motion is to run this by the panel again by seniority, ladies first, regarding this issue of where we go from here. And
I don't know, are you allowed to just choose who gets to go first, or is it just
I
an
don't
open
know if any
discussion
rule
wherever
says
it's
I can.
rules?
I'm just, what I'm doing is I'm utilizing what I consider to be convention in most boards that I've seen in governmental bodies. Give some deference to senior positions. And so that's all that I'm simply offering to do out of a matter of respect and to maintain some order in the discussion.
I don't have anything to say, I just don't think you can do that for Robert's rules.
Melissa?
Well, I really appreciate the superintendent going through, I don't know, that last week or the week before, my weeks are running together, giving us some ideas, giving us some options. I really do want to say how much I appreciate the very, very large number of community members that have brought forth ideas and suggestions and things that would really concern them, things that they would really like to see happen, things that they would really like to not see happen. Doesn't mean that in a perfect world we can do everything that everybody wants, but at least to have an idea of some things that might be felt to be completely detrimental and some things that might be a benefit. I would actually be brave enough to make a motion as to what I think we might do. I would make a motion, and I know it's not popular, but I think we have people in our community that will stand behind us to help us through this one. I'd like to make a motion that we cut extracurriculars. Todd estimates it at about $375,000. I would like to make a motion that we cut curriculum adoption for both this school year and the 2022-2023 school year, which would save us an estimated $300,000. As we just got cut up on salary increases, I would like to have us not do salary increases for 2022-2023 for an estimated $310,000. I think we'll save a little bit more than that as we've had some resignations and retirements. And I would like to have us take the remaining approximately 700,000 out of our cash flow reserve. I did the math and I double checked it, but that would leave us with 1,300,000. We carry over every year 212,500. So basically, that's going to give us $1,512,500 for cash reserve, which is below the recommended 60 days, but it would give us still 40 days. I think to take that down to zero is not something that we should do. And as Casey has said, if for some reason we get extra money from somewhere, I would like to stipulate that the funds go back towards backfilling our reserves.
Well, did she make a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. Do I hear a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Mr. Smith,
So are we discussing or are we making motions?
for discussion, I'm not going to prevent anybody from making a motion in the process. If they want to.
You can't discuss if there's no second.
Motion dies.
I would make a motion and we outline a path forward, eliminating any future.
Say that again, please.
My motion is to outline a path forward to eliminate any future levy requests from the school district.
The second that motion. Discussion.
Well, I
Someone
make that
second.
motion.
Larry second.
I second.
Okay.
I make that motion because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of interest in cutting where we can cut. For example, the assistant transportation director. No one was even interested in seeing if there was a cut on payroll, having an outside person. I just don't see waiting until levy time to work out things that we need to be working out now in light of the last three levy failures. Except 300 some votes this year, no, on a single vote issue item. I don't see a levy passing anytime in our near future. I told the former board, a few months ago, I don't think the levy's going to pass on a year like this. We're going to see $5 gasoline, and sure enough, it's $5 gasoline. My suspicions are for the year next year, this time it would be $7, $8 gasoline. There's no hope to change things. We have an administration that is solely in bed with the environmental extremists. They're in favor of the new green scam and the global warming hoax. The first thing that our president did before he even had.
Hold on,
lunch.
can you go back to that? I didn't write that down. Admin in bed with who? Global, no, he said something else. With, left with,
With the environmental extremists.
keep going.
He went in and shut down pipelines, shut down federal drilling, everything before he even had lunch at the White House on his very first day.
When you talk admin, what do you mean?
Pardon me?
When you say admin in bed with environmental extremists, which admin are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about Joe and Cameron.
Federal.
Okay.
In bed with-
Oh, not us. Okay.
No.
I'm like, excuse me, what?
The global warming hoaxes.
Okay,
These hoaxes have been going on a long time in the 70s, of global freezing, cooling. We're going to be able to grow crops and then it was
does this have to do with the fuel
the.
price?
Okay, I'm talking.
Sorry.
Okay, what it has to do with it is if we have $5 gasoline now, we're gonna have $7 or $8 next. What I'm saying is in the next 3 years, I don't see us passing a levy because things are gonna get hard. I said this a few months ago, and the last board kind of chuckled and laughed at me. So what I'm suggesting is we work the way forward to do the best we can. Now, there's a letter that was sent in from, well, he lives in Lewiston, but an employee of Idaho Forest Group. He was fully set up an email, he was fully in support of the levy. Okay, what about going to him? This Idaho Forest Group have saved not thousands of dollars, they saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on the last three-year levy. Go out there and look at that mill. Their tax base for the levy would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars. How about if somebody goes to them? I'll go with them. Somebody go with me. Ask them, how about, putting their money where their mouth is? How about paying some of these sports? How about paying for some of the sports buses? Every guy that was sent me a letter telling me that it's my civic duty to go ahead and pay the levy. See if he wants to donate enough to pay the bus drivers to haul the kids to the school. See what we can do to cut things down. There don't seem like a lot of desire on the board from the votes we've taken today. 50,000 here or 66,000 there is what the wages are. Double that or add another half to it. Somewhere we're going to have to make some meaningful cuts. And I'm hoping that it's not in extracurricular or sports. Let's see if we can get the support of the community. See if they'll help us. Donations. And that's why I would make that motion. I just don't see levy passing. I think the writing is pretty clear on the wall. You can't pass a $1.7 million levy. I've heard Mr. Fisk, you can correct me if I'm wrong, saying next year we need a $4 million levy. I can't see passing a $4 million levy when we can't pass a $1.7 million levy, especially in an off-season voting time like that. So that's my motion.
Further discussion?
Can I just
Sure.
discuss for a minute?
Right here.
So we did hold the secretary administrative position. We did hold the literacy coordinator position. And we did, well, building tech wasn't on the table, but there's a potential to still hold that as well. So that does save some money. As far as the payroll, we are going to talk about that on Thursday. So we're not dismissing that we wouldn't look at an outside firm. You were going to check on that and see what the expense is. It might be valuable for us to do that.
Included in my motion, I don't believe.
It was included that we were going to discuss it on Thursday and you were going to research options for payroll services. And there are some local payroll options as well, people who offer payroll services here.
In Grangerville.
Yeah, so Lamb, Fairchild, I don't know who else, but I'm sure other people do as well. So we are looking at cutting some funds there quite possibly. We'll see. And then the bus manager position, I do want to somehow, once one of them retires, I would like to move one of them up at a little lesser salary, so saving maybe 20,000. But I still feel like we need one in Kuski, definitely one in Canada or Branchville. So that's why, I mean, I do want to decrease that. It's just, I don't think we can get rid of it. But I do hear that you're saying that we would cut buses and maybe other fundraising would pay for that, like IFG or the man who,
I was suggesting that perhaps we could get these bigger companies that are saving hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 3 years not paying levies
right?
to kick in, especially if they're, you know, the ones that are promoting the levy.
And if we do decrease busing, then something would have to happen like that. So we can't fundraise for teacher positions, but we can fundraise for buses and sports.
Just as a point of clarity, anybody can make a donation to the school district and they can specify where those funds are to be spent. And the only reason that we would not accept a donation is if it was to be spent in a way that we were not allowed to or could not do. And there's a form that they can fill out if they choose to do so. I know some community members are already working on fundraising. I would just counter to say that if we cut, and let's say we give Forest Service, funds every single year, we don't hold any more of those back and we give them every year. That still means to keep our district functioning in any way, shape, or form like it is right now, we cut $3 million. And you can nickel and dime how much we pay people, but that means we cut bodies. We cut how our district functions. So we start taking positions out of this district, and that means whatever job that person was doing is not going to be done anymore. And you start taking very many of them, and then how does our district function? I mean, I think it was very meaningful when we had our presentation last week. And if you just start talking teachers, let's just as an example, not to say we're going to come, but if you're averaging maybe 50,000 per teacher, how many teachers do we cut to get to $3 million? And can we even run our schools if we get there? I mean, I'm just asking because what I hear you saying is you don't want to levy on tax basis, but we have to have a way to have our school actually continue to function. And if you take $3 million out of this school district, I would like you to show me on paper how this school even functions.
What I'm saying is this. What I'm saying is it's something that we need to start working on now. Because I don't believe you're going to get enough. It doesn't make sense if you can't get a $1.7 million levy to pass this year. In my opinion, it's going to be worse next year. How are you going to get a $4 million?
I would like to
I'm
see
not
it.
trying to be controversial here. I'm saying now is maybe a time to start working on some of this rather than, March 18th of next year.
So we're halfway to that 3 million deficit. So what are your propositions for the 1.7 loss?
Well, I'm suggesting first of all, go out and see if we can get people to help.
Fundraise 1.7 million.
Best. 1,100 people voted yes on the levy. If they all wanted to pitch in and donate some, they're happy to have the widows on fixed income pay. Maybe they can pay some. I don't know if you folks have better ideas.
That'd be 1,600 per person. If you take the 1.7 deficit and divide it by the 1,100. 1,550.
Probably less for a lot of people than if the levy would have passed. Not this year, but the last 2 years. Yes, last year, if the levy would have passed, and your property was assessed at 500,000, it would have been $1,622 extra.
So besides fundraising, what are some other ideas you have? But if we have to get to 3 million, what are your ideas to get to 1.7?
What I'm saying is that we better come up with something, because I don't think the levy is viable.
I think if you're saying we shouldn't run a levy right now in, March of 2022 for next year of, whenever we run the levy next year, I would like the pronoun to be changed from we to you. Like, I would like, what are your ideas?
My point was, I don't see a levy passing.
Right, so what are your? I mean, it's like not running a race because you're gonna lose. That would have been my entire high school career. I would have never run a race, but you've got to at least try. Wait, is that not?
Well, I'm going to
Okay.
interrupt and say we're becoming argumentative.
I'm becoming
Mr.
argumentative.
Casey is entitled to his opinion as you are. And I
I'm not
appreciate it.
arguing, I'm just asking him for his
I'm giving you my
ideas.
opinion about the tenor.
But
of
you are the
this.
chair, it's not your opinion.
You can answer the question.
With respect to what, sir?
She's asked him a question for his ideas and he refused to answer.
Well, if this is turning into a question and answer period, where would the 1.7 came from if the levy would have passed? I'll tell you where it would have come from. It would have come off the backs of widows. It would have come off the backs of people. It would have come off the backs of people fixed income. And for those who are laughing, step up with your checkbook. Make a donation.
Okay, so that's not argumentative.
That's
All right,
argumentative.
yeah.
Okay,
Do you have any
so
other points you'd like to bring
I
up
would
that you
like
haven't
to,
addressed so
I
far?
would just like to hear some other ideas that Casey has besides fundraising. And I'm not being facetious. I truly, everybody's been waiting for it. We all want to know. Where do you suggest we cut some of this? You've been a
Okay,
board
I
member
have-
for 7
I have
years.
one vote just like you have.
Right.
There's 1,700 people that said they're not going to vote for the levy. That's my point. Why don't we start working on something? I don't have all the answers. If I had all the answers, why then we wouldn't have a deficit?
But you were on the budget committee. You might
You know,
have
that
an
budget
idea.
committee, I keep hearing Melissa talk about, that was all show. Melissa and I never made a proposition. The propositions came in from Todd, they came in from Becky Hogg. We didn't come up.
But I wasn't even at a budget meeting and I understand some things that we could cut. So if you were at the budget meetings and you got more information from Becky than I have been able to, how have
What
you
we
not
got from
come up
Becky
with an
was how
idea?
much money we need to run.
Right, but that's more than I even got. I mean, it took me a while to get what I have. And I'm just wondering what your suggestions are.
So let me ask you, what is your suggestions if the levy don't pass?
So the levy already didn't pass. And so I do have suggestions, but I like doing homework for myself. I like other people showing their work as well before I give before I give my 30 hours of work, 40 hours of work. I want to see you being what do you call them? The experienced board members. I want to hear, she gave her suggestions and Todd gave this last week, gave these suggestions. So when you went home and you looked through this and you made, you were being fiscally responsible, what did you come up with?
Todd made the statement, tell me if I'm correct, Mr. Fisk, that one of our options was to do nothing.
You just take all his cash flow.
Have you ever you own a business. Is that a good business model? You want to run this like a business, but is that a good business model?
We can do what you have to. I bought $19,000 worth of hay this year and sold $15,000 worth of calves, so everything will always work out.
I understand. Did you have savings to make that deficit up?
I work night shift driving a chip truck.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we need some sort of savings. Melissa had suggested buying it down slightly. But not all of it.
I would just say, Mr. Chairman, as a matter of order, we're supposed to be discussing the motion. And we're discussing things that are not in the motion.
I don't disagree. I'm just trying to give people some latitude so we can get past some of this differences in approaches. I have a few comments, but I'll wait to see if anybody else has any comments. This is with respect to Casey's motion. All right, well, I have a few comments only, from the standpoint to sort of address what Bee was just talking about, I concur with what Melissa has recommended, even though her motion didn't pass, regarding curriculum adoption, salary increases, and the cash flow. I think there are probably other items we could look at. But as Mr. Smith has mentioned, these are, in my words, relatively small potatoes in terms of what the goal is. I too, and Mr. Fisk is not, I told him I'd be doing this, so I mean no disrespect because I'm not trying to use it as a political tool. I'm simply saying as a fact that I don't know that I've thought about anything more than if we did what I'm about to recommend, how the heck would we do it? Which I think is B's question in essence. Okay, and that is, well, let me just say, there was nobody happier than I was when the levy results came out, only for the reason that I was tired of it dominating the conversation all over the place. Okay, the vote was over, like it or not, that's how it was. I noticed something the other day when I came across the county's breakdown of the vote on the levy by area. And there's 28 items on this. And in the literal world where I live in, on the other side of the Whitebird grade, there were quite a few people who cast a vote in this, which is a good thing. High voter turnout is always a good thing. I don't care what the subject matter is. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting for the Whitebird, 2 Slate Creek precincts, Joseph Plain, and I think that was it. And Lowell, I may have my numbers wrong. We basically had, I don't think I included Lowell in this. That's a shame. Well, I'll stick with the others that I mentioned. We basically had a vote of 39 yes, 157 no. And that just kind of hit me between the eyes. That's dramatic, in my opinion, in terms of a vote. That's not, as Mr. Fisk put it, we didn't kind of lose. Well, he was exactly correct. Let me correct myself. Mr. Fisk said we didn't lose kind of. It lost by a lot. It lost badly, and that underscores that point that he made. I do have a recommendation. I join in Casey's suggestion that we move forward with the idea that whatever it takes, we are not going to run a levy. We're going to be the school district that doesn't need a levy. That's the way I prefer to look at it. The system isn't of our making, okay? But in big round numbers, and I've confirmed this with our superintendent, there's people back there smirking, which is, we just continue on with the demagoguing. I don't get that. We got problems to solve, okay? My preference would be the following, as I've confirmed with our superintendent in a couple of different conversations in general, okay? We get the money that we need in this school district from federal or state sources that allow us to provide the core education that gets the kids to a graduation. All right, the core bare bones, no frills, however you want to define it, education. We get that. So if we're not going to pass a levy, and this is where I agree with Casey, it sure doesn't look like we're headed that direction anytime soon. I don't see the point in asking for it again. What I would like us to do is, I don't like the do nothing option. That sounds irresponsible. I would like to propose, and which is why I seconded Casey's motion, I would like to propose something which I'm just going to hear now called a project regeneration. And that is, and I'm in the process of talking to a number of people about this, and I hope I intend on talking to more people about it. I'm going to keep talking about it no matter what, because I think it's got legs, whether we run a levy or not, and that is joining with the community. Okay, I'm not going to walk up to people and, with all due respect to my colleague over here, I'm not going to walk up to people and say, "You're rich, why don't you pay more?" That doesn't work for me. That's not the way I run. What I'd like to do is, I would like to see, to answer your question, B, is I would like to see if we can incorporate the concept of boosters, if you will, and take it to another level. Okay, the next level being, let's see if we can enlist the actual assistance on call it a contracted basis from the businesses and the people in this community to fund those things which the levy would otherwise pay for. Okay, give you quick examples. I realize this is not very helpful to people who like to crunch numbers. I'm not one of those people. I'm kind of a big picture idea guy, but I'm certainly open to suggestions. This makes sense to me because it allows this community, this district, the people that live here, that clearly don't want to levy, to take back some control over what this district looks like vis-a-vis what services we provide to our students. Okay, here's an example. Let's just talk about the varsity and junior varsity football program. You can take this and play with it any way you want to. You can talk about drama, you can talk about band, you can talk about any of the sports programs. And by the way, for the record, I'm not, and I can't ever imagine myself being in favor of splitting the district or cutting the CV schools or Elk City loose. That being said, here's an idea. Let's walk up to the car dealership in town and say, how about this? How about you donate the cost of the school busing for our football programs? We can probably find a way to get a tax credit because there's plenty of creative accountants out there. And how about you cover the cost of the busing? However that looks, whatever makes both sides happy, I'm fine with that. How about we go to one of the local landscapers in town and we say, how about you cover the cost for grounds maintenance for us, for the school district? Okay, go on and on. How about another organization, maybe one of the CPAs in town, will cover the cost of the coach? You see where I'm going with this? Let's build partnerships. Okay, let's find a way for this community to decide, one, what do we want? What do we want if we don't have a levy? What do we want to do? What do we want to be? What do we want to be able to say we're really proud of? Okay, that's what I want. I want the bickering and the whatever else to stop. I want people to come up with solutions. That's mine, a partnership program that I'm calling Project Regeneration. If we do nothing, no levy, go forward without anything more than what Mr. Fiskus referred to as low-hanging fruit, money that we can cut from the budget that doesn't impact personnel, all right, that doesn't impact services that we provide, on top of which, if we take this time period to relook at how we do business in this district, this is Mrs. Lee made a comment about this is a golden opportunity. And it really is. I've heard that from more than one person. This is a golden opportunity right now for this district to get back the sense of ownership of what we're about by putting skin in the game. Okay, and by being intellectually honest and saying, okay, we get it, no levies. Now what are we going to do? I hope that makes sense to you, but that's why I'm going to vote in favor of Mr. Casey's motion.
Can I speak?
Yeah.
So we just did this for Saints Peter and Paul. It is a private school here. And we spend 4 months fundraising for that school. And we ask local businesses. And we have this big gala and people donate, $3,000 to $4,000, $2,000 to $4,000 a package. And it raised maybe 120,000 this year. So I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to get from 120,000 to 3.1 million.
Okay, I'd like to answer that question. I wasn't talking about fundraising. I don't believe those words came out of my mouth with all due respect.
No, it's
I'm
asking
not-
businesses. That's what I mean. Like, that's what you do. It's fundraising.
I believe one of the words that did come out of my mouth was on however it looks, got to make the legals happy, got to make things work, but however it looks on a contractual basis to where we have businesses step up and say, I'll cover that for this year. Okay, a group of people, if they want to get it together, the boosters, but however it works out, I don't want to close any doors to any ideas that move us forward. If we're not going to have a levy money, then what are we going to do? And I don't want to have that conversation only here. Okay, so I apologize if I didn't explain the concept clearly, and it isn't the magic bullet that's going to solve all of these things, but I think we can go a long way in combination with what our options are, because we do have options, right? I think it'll get us a long way towards where we need to be, and everybody can stand there and go, you know what? It may not be 100% of what everybody would like, but that's a pretty good job, and I'm glad we made the effort.
Can I just-
Yes, sir.
Something that is overlooked is last year when the levy failed, remember reading in the paper, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but 20% of school districts in Idaho don't run levies. This year, it's probably going to be higher because some of them failed besides ours. So how is it that those 20% of schools get through without levies?
We should look at
And
that.
it's not the
Absolutely.
affluent, it's not the affluent areas that aren't passing the levies. It's not West Ada, it's not Bonneville County, it's not Idaho Falls, it's not West Ada. It's
West
not.
Ada failed their levy last year and they ran it a second time.
And what happened the second
What
time?
I'm saying is the ones that don't even run the levy aren't these affluent areas.
100 out of 115 school districts
Quite a
are
bit.
levy in the state.
All right, my bad. I don't like it any more than you do. Okay, we're not supposed to take comments from the audience. So my apologies for allowing that earlier. I apologize to you, Katrina, but
It's
That's
areas
Mr. Casey's
such
floor.
as, I remember some down around Bruno, Rupert, I don't remember exactly which ones, but these aren't real rich areas. These aren't the areas with the $1 million homes like West Ada and Bonneville County and stuff that aren't running the levies. It's the poorer, less affluent areas that aren't running levies, and somehow they're getting through.
Can I speak on that? I spoke to, I think it was Marsh Valley or someone near somewhere down south, and they don't run a levy. And I think there's not that many that don't run levies.
20%,
Are you sure?
yes. Well, last year it was.
oh, something.
Okay, yeah,
Something
anyway.
worth looking at.
So one of them decided they're not going to do any building maintenance. So they didn't do any maintenance for 10 years. Then they had this group come through and analyze and do a report for $34,000. And they projected how many students were going to be in the schools. And then from that, they ran a building bond or whatever instead of the levy, so that they could then do those updates, but their buildings are in severe disrepair. So it's something to consider.
Well, I just want to remind everybody when we start talking about things like having our community step up and help with, $3 million, just remember that if we're saying designate funds towards certain things, take pride in it, whatever. We need to remember it's like 82 or 83% of our budget is people. And I really think that I've worked for a nonprofit before. It's a really horrible thing for a person to feel like they need to go begging people for money for their job. And I know so many of our teachers and our staff do get on the phone and they do make the phone calls to say, hey, please remember to vote. But that's a bad position that they shouldn't have to feel like they have to be in. But for us to have to basically go out and, get certain people of our community to help put this money in there because others aren't willing, I don't know that that's the solution either. And I just want to have us be careful and respectful of our staff, that we would be going out and basically saying, hey, you want to sponsor our 4th grade teacher this year? I mean, I just want us to be careful.
With all due respect, that wasn't what I was suggesting, but I get your point. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Mr. Fisk, if you don't mind.
Want a path forward to eliminate any future levy requests for the Mountain View School. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right.
Nay.
So that fell 2-3.
Yes, sir. Do I hear any further motions?
I would like to motion board for a 4-day school week for 2 years and try it out. And I would also, because I don't want to cut a single teacher. I don't want to lose anything that's going to impact the kids quite so harshly. Bus drivers are gonna take a little bit of a hit. Our power bill will go down. I think it's definitely worth a try. I also think that we should not adopt the curriculum for the 2-year span, which is also, so basically I've done quite a bit of research on this 4-day week. Anywhere from 2 to 5%, which is 280,000 at 2% to 725,000 at 5%. So that's a huge savings. I'm a sports mom, so I mean, I'm not gonna be cutting the extracurriculars. That's not my idea. I mean, like, if it happens, it happens. That's horrible. It shouldn't. And when I say extracurriculars, I mean drama, fine arts, music, band, all of them. Those are things that make kids well-rounded, responsible for themselves, take pride in a little bit more. So, I mean, to take those things away from kids, I don't want to lose a teacher. I don't want to lose our aides. And in my mind, this is basically the only way. And this is us showing that we're going to try and cut to the bare bone minimum. And yes, I agree with Casey, to a point of, I don't want to have to run a levy every year. We should try to be fundraising for a little bit of something to put into our pocket, because obviously you don't want to go to the grocery store and have zero money in your bank account, right? In all actuality, it really, to be less impactful on the kids. I know there's pros and cons, and the biggest cons are going to come from the elementary school, because those moms or dads are working and, you know, Friday, but you know, you also got high school kids that aren't in school. So who's to say you couldn't hire one to come watch your kids and give them a little bit of responsibility as well? Those are my suggestions to the board.
Lisa, you may get that as a motion.
I motioned that. I did. I motioned a.
That was a lot. So let me see if I can recap that.
Yeah,
So
4 day.
you
4
made a
day
motion
first.
for a 4-day school work week, pilot that 2 years or a
Yes.
2-year program.
2-year program.
Hold on the curriculum, which is around 300,000. You felt like there's a savings of a scale 280 to 700 plus thousand.
Yes.
Didn't want to cut in the extracurricular, teachers, pairs, that's not understand fundraising. So let's pair that into a motion so that 4-day school week with cuts on the curriculum.
Yep.
Anywhere else at this point, or just cuts on the curriculum, and whatever the savings yields in the 4-day school work week, which you won't really, it'll be in the scale, right? You won't, the board won't know it until you experienced a year or
Yes,
two, right?
correct. I mean, you won't know the exact amount of savings until you've gone through an entire year.
Okay,
So yes, that's my vote. That's my,
and then
That's my
the
motion.
remainder of the piece, you're not trying to package into this
Nope.
motion.
the
Okay.
remainder, I'm not trying to package.
Okay.
So it's the-
4-day curriculum.
Okay, so Lacey's motion is a 4-day school week for 2 years. Also holding the curriculum at 300,000. There are some general notes of savings, but it's hard to quantify that. You
Yeah.
don't know.
You're right.
So I put a period into that. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So that's the motion.
So here a second. Motion fails for lack of a second.
I move that we do try a 4-day week. I mean, yeah, 4-day week for 2 years and only that in the motion.
I would second that.
Because if I could make an assumption, cuts as we go and keep working the whole project. Okay, gotcha. Discussion?
Okay, well, I know there's people who hope that there's gonna be savings from a 4-day school week. The national studies that I read a lot of them, showed that the savings was from 0.4 to 2.5. That was under ideal conditions. That kind of goes along with what Mr. Fiss had suggested a month ago.
Could you share that research with us, please?
I can get it for you, yeah.
Thank you.
It's a study out of Colorado. I was gonna have it prepared, but my wife is gone. I don't have a copy of.
I'll mention that I was having a great conversation with Mr. Miskin over at Hill High the other day, and he referred me to and I've got two names in mind, so I'm not going to mention either one because I don't want to give you the wrong one, but he mentioned a administrator that he's known for his entire career, who did his master's thesis examining every conceivable angle on 4-day school weeks, and he's currently working he's not an old guy like me, he's actually in there doing it as well. So just to let the board know, I will contact him ASAP, and he's already indicated he's willing to share that. That might be very helpful because I'd call that an unbiased look. It was something that was actually published as an academic piece. So I'll get that coming. Just for the record.
I guess I just feel very uncomfortable with the fact that, you know, it may or may not save us money. And if you wanted to stack up one side, you can find all the research in the world that says it's the most great, wonderful thing. And if you want to stack up the other side to say it's a horrible choice, you can stack up the research to say it's a horrible choice. I mean, I've read both across the board. I will say, however, though, and I don't remember what year it was, but our school district did form a task force and did look at this and did 06 and did decide that it was not something that they wanted to do. I would say if the cost savings are questionable, I wouldn't want us to step into it lightly. If this is something that would make sense for our school district, it needs to be researched and task force for our school district. It's just my personal opinion. I wouldn't want to rush into it hoping that we're going to save some money. I think it bears a lot more looking at to make that step.
Absolutely fair point.
Whoever is paying for the research and study is the way it comes out.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was in a lawsuit a few years ago with the Corps of Engineers over wetlands. First time we went to court, this expert came in and he had this report that my land was definitely wetlands. You know, it had been hayed, it had been farmed 3 years. And 2 years later, we went back to court again. Guess who wrote the report for us? The same guy that said it was wetlands before. So anything you want from a report, you can go through a report. It'll say, yeah, you're going to save 5%. There's another report that says, no, you're not going to save any. And I know we're in a tough spot. I'm not debating that, but I want to know if the chance of maybe making a savings is worth the downside. What I read is that it's definitely a drag in student achievement. There's a lack of child care options for younger children. It's a negative financial impact for school nutritional programs, fewer meals for low-income children, and a big increase, perhaps not in our area, but a big increase in juvenile crime. Kids have nothing to do. They get tired of playing computer games and they're out in the streets. I'm not sure that will really affect our area. Less instructional time, less extracurricular activities, because days are longer. Longer days mean less retention. I'm surprised at mothers who would be in favor of this. It reduces achievement. increase of stress and burnout for both the teachers and the students, lower test scores. And I know you've been reading other reports that say higher test scores. I don't understand how that could be. You're got your kids in school 20% less. That's I don't see how the scores are going to go up. Health outcomes was a big thing. Academic performance, food insecurity, mild crime. I just hard time if I was a mother wanting my kid to be in school 20% less. It's less than like the kids being able to sit on the couch doing computer games.
But maybe the parents actually interact with them when they're at home,
Well, that's.
and they don't just play video
that's
games
fine if
that
the
day.
Parents are home.
Maybe you want a parent survey.
Or maybe a grandparent might step in and they might get to spend some time with them. They don't normally get.
So I do have to say, I did call Orfino's school board and I did talk to them. Cheryl Burks, I think was her name.
Christina.
Sorry. Really informational. She said their test scores have gone up a little bit. There was a big savings and there was a big to-do about when they started this 4-day week, and they trial based it off of a 2-year trial. And then they asked for the parents' input survey to see if they wanted to go back to a 5-day if it wasn't working for them. You don't have to extend your school day per se longer. You can extend your school year maybe by a week, and then you don't have to extend your day quite as long. So I did talk to CAMI's superintendent, Mr. Puckmeyer. He did say something about 5% savings at CAMI as well, and they did the same thing. I know the first year that they started it with CAMI, they had Wednesday off. And then by the next year, they were to Friday because it just didn't work out quite as good. So it has saved quite a bit there, but I can see the cons. I could see we do have a high poverty level. And yeah, kids do run amok. They do that. You see them all summer long. When they're out of school for 2 months straight, you see them
Doing whatever they do.
being juveniles. I do see that part as well, but I also could see the benefits, not just in my own kids. Kids are burnt out by Thursday afternoon, especially if they're in any sort of extra program, whether it be kids club, discovery. What's the third one we have? What's the one in Oak City? Reach. Whether it even be that. And Elk City has also been on a 4-day week for, I don't know how many years.
Well,
Do you know,
elementary
Casey?
students get a lot less hours.
Okay.
Require a lot less.
All I'm saying is like, we shouldn't just write it off.
Well, and like you said, research goes both ways, so I'm not gonna quote research
Right.
because we all know that. The fact is that we can all agree on is the levy did not pass and we have a deficit. And the biggest way, proposed way that we can look at it without hurting teachers and students is trying a 4-day week for 2 years. Even if it saves, 2%. If it saves 4%, it's 560,000. That's still substantial. So I've talked to Kids Club and they said that they would be willing to step up on Fridays and they could offer some services. It can only extend about 30 minutes. We've had some really great parents that have actually gone through calendars and looked at Orfino's and CAMI's and made it so that it's not that influential. It's not that excessive for the additional. So there are places going to 4-day work weeks. Are you a 4-day or 5-day? 5-day? Your people work 5 days?
Yeah, but they're 10-hour days.
Right, but it's that time over a calendar year instead of just that day. Does that make sense?
I find myself in a position of basically agreeing with everybody on this. One of the questions I have, and then I think we can go to a vote on the motion. Is I want to know why, I mean, I don't want to chalk it up to people just don't like change. I want to know why apparently the overwhelming majority of schools that try, or districts rather, that try a 4-day school week don't want to go back. I love the idea about doing a 2-week trial and then polling our parents and everybody. I think that's wise, and I think that's good management. So with that being said, and seeing that we have no further comments, Mr. Fisk.
Four-day school week, 2 years, second place.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
3-2.
Motion carries 3-2.
Copy. We're adjourned. Thank you for 3 hours.